ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about the 5th Ninja Turtle, Jennika. Jennika is a relatively new character who, despite being a turtle now, was actually a human first. She first appeared in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 51 in 2015, and when we were first introduced to her, she was already a member of the Foot Clan, operating as an assassin, working directly under Master Splinter during his early days, taking over the Foot Clan in the wake of the Shredder's death. She was part of the old guard though, and she believed ninjas were supposed to kill. But Splinter, while acting very out of pocket as leader of the Foot Clan, still believed killing was something reserved for only the most unsolvable of problems. And after openly attempting to betray and kill Splinter, he decided, rather than exile Jennika, he gave her a second chance, showing her that strength comes from more than your ability to take a life. This had a profound effect on her for multiple reasons that I'm about to get into, chief among them being her very dysfunctional upbringing. Jennika grew up in a broken home and lived a very turbulent life as a kid, and in her teens, it's revealed her father was abusive to her mother and she witnessed him physically assaulting her more often than not, and as a result of this, she ran away from home to escape her terrible living conditions, and this led to her living on the streets. She'd get into fights and get arrested and ultimately wind up falling for a bad boy named Silas. And because they were both homeless and lacked any prospects when panhandling failed them, Jennika and Silas had to resort to being thieves, and not even just simple pickpocketing, but armed robbery. But things went south when one of her accomplices killed a store clerk, and this ultimately led to Jennika getting left holding the bag and getting arrested. This is where she would meet a kindred spirit behind bars who saved her from getting jumped, an as yet still unnamed young woman who was trained in martial arts, and this woman became fast friends with Jennika and trained Jennika how to fight like her. While both in prison, they even managed to attempt an escape, one that was foiled when a rival prisoner followed them as they were making their break for it. Jennika was able to get away, but the woman following them killed Jennika's friend. This would lead to Jennika living on the streets again, roughly around the time Shredder began swelling the ranks of the Foot Clan. This would be when Jennika became an assassin, already having been trained by her now dead friend, who oddly enough was a member of the Foot if you paid very close attention to some of the iconography on her clothing, and already seeming to have some street fighting talent. Under Shredder and Karai's tutelage, she became a high-ranking assassin. When Shredder died, Splinter was the first person since her friend in prison to treat her with kindness and compassion. So it's no surprise that while she was a hardened killer before Splinter took over the Foot, there was already a softer, kinder person inside who was waiting to claw her way back to the surface. After that brief attempt to betray Splinter, she became a fierce ally to him, even going as far as becoming his Chunin, which in ninja terms means she was his second in command, and if Splinter commanded her, she'd kill anyone he desired. Despite the moral differences, then, she even became a fierce ally to the Turtles themselves. And while the Turtles' relationship with Splinter was dodgy at best during this time, as when he was leader of the Foot, Jennika was the one constant between them. She'd risk her life for the Turtles, Splinter too, and she ultimately did, when parlaying with Karai. At that moment, Jennika was propositioned to betray Splinter and the Turtles and join her instead, and she refused. This is what led to Karai impaling her with her katana and leaving her for dead. The turtles, in an attempt to save her life, would try to get her medical attention, but because of how fast her vitals were crashing, their only hope was to use the ooze, which has healing properties. Used in small doses, it can heal a normal human without transforming them, and that was their plan to save Jennika's life. But because Metalhead showed up and destroyed the canister of ooze, this led to Leonardo having to make a snap decision, which was him giving Jennika a blood transfusion. This blood transfusion not only revitalized Jennika with fresh blood, but also the mutagen coursing through the turtle's veins, transforming her into the Jennika we know her as today. Jennika's transformation was rocky at first. At the time, she was dating Casey Jones, but Jennika's transformation drove a wedge between them, really more on Casey's part than it was on Jennika's. He just couldn't accept her in her new body, and this would lead to Jennika having issues with her new place in the world, sometimes even lashing out at the other turtles, and also struggling with wanting to get revenge on Karai, and just a whole bunch of aggressive feelings that she just didn't know how to channel. Eventually, she would grow to overcome this anger at her new situation and become the 5th official member of the Splinter Clan, taking up the yellow bandana due to then writer Tom Waltz wanting her bandana to match her blonde hair from her human form, and her trademark weapons would become the metal claws that she had used as a human member of the Foot, otherwise known as Tekokagi, and her single katana. And while she doesn't necessarily wield a bow and arrow, she is sometimes depicted on covers having them in addition to her trademark weapons. She's been trained by both Splinter, Shredder, and Leonardo in the arts of ninjutsu, and has become as skilled a ninja as any of them. Her talent for remaining unseen was proven just in her first appearance, when oftentimes no one knew she was there unless she wanted them to know, and by then it was usually too late. Beyond that, she's proven to be a master of stealth and espionage. She's also skilled in reconnaissance operations during her time in Shredder's Foot Clan, and her skill in assassination was good enough to make her a high-ranking member of the Foot. She's even proven herself a pretty capable escapologist. Jennika has also become skilled enough in the art of Kujikiri, what is otherwise known as a form of dark ninja sorcery. She can telepathically reveal the truth to those around her. This power was instrumental during the Armageddon game story arc, helping both the mutants of Mutant Town and the humans of the rest of New York realize that aliens like Madame Null, as well as humans like Baxter Stockman and the Elder God entity, the Rat King, were working together with a plan to subjugate all of humanity. And this effectively led to humans and mutants actually living, while not necessarily in 100% total peace, but definitely made conversations easier for mutants, aliens, and humans to coexist once they realized they had a common foe. Due to the turtles' revised origin, Jennika is not necessarily as unique in terms of being a human first before being a turtle as some might want to believe. But because the turtles' time as humans was in a previous life, and they have been animals the entire time in their current lives, this is still one of the more significant differences between herself and the others. She is also taller than any other Ninja Turtle, save for Venus de Milo, and technically Slash, whose height is kind of all over the place, but he is usually depicted being at least 2 feet taller than any of the other turtles. But Slash is a special case. Most characters aren't as tall as he is, so I'm not really gonna count him. But other than Slash, Venus is the only other turtle who is taller than Jennika, which is funny considering she's the only other female turtle in the present timeline. And Venus stands at about roughly 5'7", whereas Jennika stands at 5'6", which is the same height that she was before her transformation. The other turtles' heights in descending order are Donatello at 5'4", Leonardo at 5'2", Michelangelo at 5'1", and Raphael being the shortest at 5 foot even. And in case you're wondering, these heights have been confirmed to be canon in the IDW universe by writer Sophie Campbell. Aside from being one of the taller turtles, Jennika is also one of the older ones. She's actually older than all of the turtles, at least in terms of social age. We never learned Jenny's exact age, but she was a teenager when she left home, and her time with Silas is stated to be at least 10 years ago by the time of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 101. So at the very least, she's either in her mid or late 20s. Considering the fact that she was arrested when she was a teenager and sent to actual jail, not juvenile hall, but actual prison, I'm gonna go on a limb and say she's probably closer to being in her late 20s. If you take into account the Turtles' reincarnation, then things get a little weird since the Turtles were teenagers at the time of their deaths in their previous life. That said, Jennika is at least socially older than them by a few years. Jennika is also one of the only Turtles who doesn't have the same form of brown eyes. Most of the Ninja Turtles' eyes are brown. Her eyes are blue like they were when she was a human. And while every core Ninja Turtle is named after an artist from the Renaissance, like her female counterpart Venus, she is not named after a Renaissance artist. She just retained the name that she used as a human. Speaking of her name, her real name is one of those things that's kind of up for debate. While she goes by the name Jennika, she is often referred to as Jen or Jenny, and she's even referred to by one character as Jennifer. So it's probably likely that her name is actually Jennifer and Jennika is just a name she adopted. Another interesting thing about Jennika is that when we initially meet her, she is considered a heterosexual character, but after Casey dumped her when she transformed into a turtle, she ended up eventually falling in love with her new friend, Sheena, a woman who was a human originally, like Jennika, but was transformed into a humanoid pig when Old Hob unleashed the mutagen bomb on a portion of New York citizens around the same time that Jennika was transformed into a turtle by Leonardo's blood transfusion. Jennika is a popular character among both old and new fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, oftentimes being demanded for every new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle anything. Many, myself included, were even heartbroken when IDW announced the relaunch of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic series, and no word of Jennika was ever mentioned, despite the relaunch not even being a reboot. That said, she's had 2 different miniseries and has featured with solo stories in multiple issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe. She's a character with a lot to offer and also brings some much needed female perspective to the TMNT. And don't get me wrong, April O'Neil is nice and all, but Jenny is just flat out better by every metric. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.